Voters overwhelmingly passed Measure U in November of 2012 as a temporary half-cent sales tax proposed to restore and protect city services. The intent was to restore police and fire services, park maintenance, and other essential services that were cut between 2008 and 2013. The Measure U Community Advisory Committee was formed in 2018 to ensure that all the expenditures of city resources reflect city and community priorities. The committee shall review, report, and make non-binding recommendations on revenue expenditures of certain funds from the transaction and use tax. 50% of all Measure U funds are allocated to the police department. Formed in 2016, the Community Police Review Commission was established to provide community participation in reviewing and recommending police department policies, practices, and procedures, and to monitor implementation, evaluation, and sustainability of city policing initiatives and programs. On July 19th, the Police Review Commission and the Measure U Advisory Board invited the Sacramento Police to come to a joint meeting to hear the findings of a UC Davis study on police reform and build community trust through transparency. Unfortunately, the Sacramento Police Department declined the invitation. The following are the key findings from a public deliberation study to elicit community view on police reform, funded by Blue Shield of California Foundation and the Center of Health Decisions, UC Davis.
Pat Powers with the University of California, Davis, and I'm pleased to present the findings with my colleague, Shawnee Buggs. We're sharing some preliminary results today that are specific to Sacramento. We can go to the next slide. You see our study team members. I'm Pat Powers and affiliated with the Center for Health Decisions at the Center for Healthcare Policy and Research at UC Davis. And my colleague, Dr. Shawnee Buggs, is an expert in violence prevention and will be presenting the key findings from the study. This is the meat, the heart of what we were asking people to deliberate on. We provided them with 4, and each of these options actually has a lengthy paragraph to describe what we mean by it.
In terms of recommendations from our study, for the city, we found the background information about the police budget relatively challenging to find. And so making this information more transparent with accompanying educational materials would really help the community better understand resources devoted to policing compared to other expenditures. We found that the deliberation process, one that includes an educational component, these structured choices, forced choices, as Pat described, and neutral facilitation can elicit community values and preferences that can, and we argue, should be factored into police reform decisions. And it is especially important to reach out to the communities and individuals who are disproportionately impacted by policing. And finally, in general, substantial reforms were desired. Nearly 3/4 of our participants, over 3/4 of our participants wanted to see substantial reforms to policing in Sacramento, with the recognition that they may be implemented in a stepwise fashion, recognizing that there are broader consideration for community readiness and over an expanded time frame beyond the 1 to 3 years would be necessary to put substantial reforms in place. But the reforms are absolutely desired from what we found in our study. I've actually been in another project that I'm working on, I've been trying to analyze SAC PD 911 calls for service, and have found it proved to be quite difficult to really disentangle the activity that occurs on any particular call for service to Sacramento PD using the open data portal.
Data portals. So one of the key findings was that they have a chart. We showed a chart with New Orleans, Montgomery County, showed that police officers spent at least 50% of their time responding to non-criminal and traffic-related incidents, with only about 4% of their time devoted to handling violent crime, which includes homicide, robbery, rape, and aggravated assault.
I think I would just add that one of the things that in Measure U we've talked about quite often has been really how are we measuring how those Measure U dollars are being spent? What is the return on investment? So I think it's going to be very important that we really look at, when we ask about what data and metrics are they using to measure, they didn't really provide real concrete answers around that. They were pretty plain. I can think of a better word to use, but pretty plain. So we often talk about a lot of the folks that are getting funding and how we want to make sure where those dollars are being spent and are they reaching their measurable outcomes. And so I think if we're going to expect that of our nonprofits and our other organizations that are getting funding, that we also expect it of our departments that are within the city as well.
So I want to echo the sentiments of Commissioner Williams, as well as Commissioner Bliss, because I feel the same way as the accountability and the metrics that need to be provided by the police department. We are 70% above the national average in crime. So how effective is this budget really? How effective is this really for our city? If we're talking about being safe, if we have a 70% above national average crime rate, then how effective is this, and how is our money being spent well? So I would like to see more accountability, more data and metrics to see where these dollars go and how effective it is as well.
In particular, I wanted to echo Commissioner Bliss on sort of disappointment that we didn't have the participation of the police. I think this is a unique opportunity for these two commissions to look at how our work can reinforce and support each other and the works on the budget, and given the nature of this, the fact that we have a budget, but no one here to talk to us about it, I think is a really unfortunate. And I do hope that we can reconvene with them where we can have a more thorough discussion about the budget. And I think in particular, the notion of, we've been doing it with all of the other departments on the Measure U and echoing what Commissioner Williams said, what are the metrics for success? And with a budget as large as the police, how are we all supposed to evaluate simply maintaining or increasing staffing levels doesn't necessarily relate to impacts or outcomes that the community is looking for, or even that the police department measures it. So I do think this is an important opportunity for us to talk about how we evaluate those budget expectations and the current budget based on the outcomes they're achieving. And this is a good opportunity for these two commissions to do it.
This has been very enlightening in some ways, and in other ways, it's nothing new. And I mean, it's really nothing new. And even though they did this public deliberations, the findings are what we already know. And personally, I don't want to use more time or money to get some kind of another report that tells us what we already know.
There's an estimated increase nationally of 25% in murders in 2020, but there's a decrease in almost every other form of crime, and particularly robberies, which are down 10%, estimated decrease in property crimes, according to the FBI's preliminary data of 7.9%, and then a decrease in rapes is by 14.2%. And SAC PD hasn't really provided us with any real details on what those crime rates are to talk about justifying what what increased response they are seeing that is requiring them to have a record-setting budget of over $165 million. So couldn't agree more with Member Kibble and others who have already raised it. I mean, that is the ultimate question, right? Of like, what will it take to move our city council members to actually just follow the data that goes into what we know about the SAC PD budget and the other things that we could pay that are sorely needed. Our respective bodies and approve that ourselves. But I'm definitely interested in doing that. An ad hoc either way, but I'd also like to make sure that we request an additional joint meeting at some point this fall so that SAC PD has enough time to recalculate its budget from Measure U, as well as the other areas that it's going to be taking out of, because if it's not coming out of Measure U, then obviously it's coming out of the general fund, which we still have unanswered questions around how they're apportioning that funding by program, which we definitely still want to have answered.
Hi, I'm Dawn Holm, the Director of Finance. And, you know, this is a $1.3 billion budget. So what you get in the budget book is a high-level view of the department budgets. The city does not do programmatic budgeting. We don't break things down at a program level, but we do it by division. That's the challenge. We do not break down the city's budget by program. We're, you know, I mean, it's a $1.3 billion budget, you know, we don't break it down program by program. Now we can work on what we can provide to you. We have all the data. I'm not saying we don't have the data and can't answer the questions. With a $1.3 billion budget and all the departments we have, there's not a way to present at a programmatic level the entire budget. For the Measure U portion, we have broken it down into programs so that we can support the mayor's breakdown of programs based on economic development, homelessness, public safety, youth, those types of categories, climate, and that will be presented. I've been asked to go ahead and present a summary of the budget as well as the revised Measure U forecast during the August meeting, and I will be prepared to provide that.
You can have that breakdown for for the Sacramento Police Department. That would be like, that's what I would like.
I'll work with the city manager's office and we'll see what we can provide.
Helped to raise my nephew, who is a young biracial 10-year-old with special needs who is growing up in these neighborhoods. And I continue to fear for his safety in light of Joseph Mann and many others who have been victimized by the police. I think about our city council's lack of response to the police commission and the continued funding that they receive with very little strings attached from our city council. And it makes me really scared.
Simple breakdown. Measure U makes up 3% of the total police budget, which is $45 to $47 million. That's only 3% of their total budget, which for fiscal year 21-22 is $165,871,667. No wonder we have such a problem with homelessness in our city. The police department is hoarding the funding. Law enforcement does just that. It enforces laws, and these laws are subjective, made up by people with implicit biases who are situated in positions of power in a racist system. Law enforcement does not keep communities safe. If it did, we'd have a lot more safety than we have now. Communities keep communities safe. To quote Dr. Buggs, success requires deep, transformative thinking about how we support people. It means recognizing that when people have their needs met, communities are safer. Thank you.